Hi folks, how you doing? Here's a very interesting game from the 10th round of the Tata tournament 2014. A really crazy battle between Rapport from Hungary and Hikaru Nakamura from United States. Both of them very imaginative and very creative players. And we're gonna see a very interesting game here, crazy mess with lots of interesting lines. So let us go. Rapport has white pieces, and well, he's been playing all kinds of uncommon openings. Now he plays knight f3, and against c5 he plays b3, just trying to get out of the most common, better known theory. And well, Nakamura of course is like a fish in the water in this kind of territory, as he loves all kinds of openings. So it was going to be an interesting battle. It seemed, and really it was. d6, it seems Nakamura wanted to play a Sicilian. Now he would love to see an e4 by white, but it didn't happen. Instead e3 was played. Now e5, taking the dark squares in the center now that he can. Bishop b5 check, and knight c6. Here, well, this is all, I don't know if there is a name for this. Maybe you could call it kind of a Larsen opening or something. This is kind of an irregular opening, I think. Here knight c3, which makes sense to protect this e4 square. Otherwise, other moves which could seem to be logical, like bishop b2, would allow this e4 or for instance castling e4, and well, this might be uncomfortable, this pawn on e4. So knight c3 is a correct move, developing a piece and protecting this e4 square. Knight f6, and now the craziness starts. Time to calculate from the very beginning. d4. Lots of opportunities here, lots of captures, lots of lines, so lots of calculations must be played. e4 is a correct move. Nakamura played it. Let us see what happened. If c takes d4, obviously it takes. And now e takes d4 wouldn't be that great, because now knight takes and double attack on the knight on c6. Bishop dc must be played, and now this is better for white because, well, black has an isolated queen pawn, which doesn't seem to be great. It's not in the 4th rank, it's even in the 3rd. And white is going to fianchetto his bishop, which is a good way to fight against the isolated queen pawn, so this is probably much better for white, definitely. Instead, after the first capture, instead of taking once again e4 probably was more correct. But now, still, this is very good for white, it seems. Now d5, this is main idea in this kind of position. E takes f3, d takes c6, and b takes. Otherwise, white is taking on b7 with a check. So check, bishop d7, bishop takes a8, queen takes, and queen takes f3. And white has won lots of material. It's, I think, pawn and the exchange, so this is absolutely winning for white. So it was much more correct, what Nakamura played, e4 on the spot. Now, well, d5 was played here. Seems kind of an only move, because if you go away with the knight with a not very great square, a6 will follow, or even d5. So it would be very good for black. So d5, a6, and here bishop f1. Otherwise, if d takes c6, black would take on b5, and if c takes b7, now bishop takes, the knight would go to, say, d2. White pieces seem, well, a little bit lost. Black will have lots of pawns in the center, bishop pair, and his position seems to be at least a little bit better. So bishop f1 was played by Rapport here. Now bishop comes back. Modern chess. The knight is under attack on c6, so knight e7. Instead, taking on f3. If white would take, b takes, and if queen f3 was also playable, I think. Now d5, controlling lots of central squares, bishop pair, lots of space in the center. Well, this can't be too bad for black, more or less balanced, maybe. Nakamura decides to go knight e7. Now there is some pressure against the pawn on d5, but his own pawn on e4 may be weak, so here knight d2 with double attack against the pawn, while he's having the double attack on his own pawn. Instead, knight g5 may seem a little typical move in some opening some schemes to get this pawn, but now knight f5, well, probably white has to play something like s3 to just get rid of that pawn, which is cramping his position. He takes, queen takes, knight takes, and probably black would play g7, bishop g7, g6, bishop g7, short castle, and well, have a favorable position probably, because this is kind of a Benoni with not that favorable with white, as he has committed to play this b3. So knight d2, and now interesting, bishop f5, absolutely logical, protecting that pawn. Bishop b2 was played here, and b5, grabbing lots of space on the queen side. Instead, if knight e takes d5, there are some little tactics here. Interesting, white can't take on with the knight on d from d to e5, because now he's attacking with both with two pieces, the knight on d5. So if knight takes back, and well, d5 for instance, bishop e2, d4, black is going to be very happy here. Instead here, knight takes e4, queen takes d5, and this is probably better for white. The bishop is under attack, and white will develop a little bit faster than in other variations. So these were more or less playable lines, but lots of calculations needed to be made here. So b5 is very principled, just keeping that pawn there for the time being and grabbing some space, threatening for instance b4 in some cases to chase more this knight and cramp white's position even more. Here h3, maybe with the idea to play g4, bishop g2, who knows, to get some space in the king side. So once you don't have it on the queen side or in the center, you might try to play g4, bishop g2, attack the pawn on e4. But Nakamura prevents it in a nice way. h5, there's taking space over all the board. And here a3. Not really sure about this move, maybe to prevent some b4, to be able to capture, etc. But well, I don't know. After this knight c8, then Nakamura is going to recycle, reubicate this knight. Now, I don't know, Richard plays a4 here. Maybe he's a little bit lost, or I'm not sure why didn't he play a4 at the first spot if he wanted to play this. I mean, maybe I would have played bishop e2, something which seems more normal, knight b6, that knight must be relocated, and well, castle, bishop e7, and white's position is not a dream, but it's more or less, I don't know, he has much less space, but probably it's still not that bad. Instead a4, now b4 is played, and the knight goes back to e2, sacrificing the pawn on d5. Instead he will try to relocate this knight to a better square to have something. Nakamura just doesn't think it twice, so he takes on d5 with the knight. Now the knight goes to g3, and a very, very interesting and seems to be seemingly a very correct move by Nakamura. Knight takes e3. Absolutely a brilliant move here. Instead was also probably playable bishop g6, just going away with the bishop. But now the point is that white will take the pawn on e4 and attack the knight on d5. Now knight c7, because otherwise if it goes back to f6, takes, bishop takes, queen f3 with lots of attacks. On the queen is attacking the rook on a8. The queen and the bishop are attacking f6, which is pawned. He can't move, so this is very good for white. Otherwise, knight c7, and well, this seems playable. A weird and bizarre position, but still seems playable for both players. Instead, Nakamura went for this knight takes e3, which is absolutely a brilliant move. This is, I mean, you're sacrificing a piece, and you have to calculate in a very long term to see if it's correct or not. Rapport didn't take it, and probably this was a mistake. This is leading to problems for him. The most critical certainly line was to take, and now the point is that black is going to play queen h4, pinning the knight, attacking the knight, and it seems that there isn't a very great way to defend it. Almost only move, it seems to be king f2, just defending the knight. Now black has d5 with the idea to bring the bishop to d6 and attack the knight twice. White has some little resources to defend, but he's going to be tied up to the defense of these very weak squares, very weak pieces. Bishop e2 is the move to play, after bishop d6, double attack on the knight, to play knight df1, keep defending it. And well, black certainly has compensation for the piece. Not sure if this is good for white or black. I mean, the engine says it's more or less equal, but you can never rely on engine in these kinds of positions. You must be a human to see this in the board, and this may be very uncomfortable for white. So that's probably the reason that Richard Rapport, strong GM, didn't take this, because black certainly has lots of compensation, lots of pressure. I mean, you can play queen knight e7 and queen e1 to just get away with the king and still protect, but white pieces are tied up, uncoordinated, and black certainly has all the initiative in the world for the sacrificed piece. Well, he got a couple of pawns for the piece. It's not a whole piece, but still, this must be better for black. I mean, this is very uncomfortable for white. All your pieces are in very little space, so certainly was the critical point of this line. And knight takes e3 once again. I love this move. This is absolutely amazing move. So Richard didn't take this. He just didn't go get with it. He preferred to play queen e2, which of course allows knight takes c2. It seems black is this is not a completely blowout. You're not black is not winning on the spot with this typical check on fork, but this is very still unclear, but probably already better for black. I mean, the complications are always going to favor black in this case, almost always. King d1 and now bishop g6, intermediate move. Once again correct. Nakamura is playing really well in this game. Instead, if knight takes a1, now the knight could take on f5, and now white has lost some material, but he has some threats. He's threatening to get the knight back on a1. He's threatening to take the e4, d5, for instance. And here, for instance, white could go with knight takes g7 check, bishop takes, rook say h7, bishop takes a1 with a very unbalanced and unclear position. I mean, white has 3 light pieces, black has a couple of rooks, a light piece, and well, black is up 2 pawns in terms of pawns, but this is very unclear, very unbalanced, double-edged position. It's very difficult to judge this. Instead of taking on g7, for white it was possible to take on a1 for once, but once again, I mean, I'm not sure who is better here. This is a complete mess. Instead, bishop g6 seems to be more clear. He's not taking on a1 for the time being, but keeps the bishop away from the attack. Now, knight takes a4, e4. Sorry, this is correct. I mean, you can't go ahead protecting your rook, because this wouldn't be very active, and black is winning there. Here, of course, taking on a1 is not a great option, as knight f6 is checkmate. There it goes, nice checkmate there. Instead, queen e7, for instance, and well, I mean, yes, here, if rook c1, this is what I wanted to show. If you want to protect your rook, now knight goes to d4, and black's pieces are really cramped. You just can't bear to have that knight there, so you have to take. He takes d4, and white pieces lack space, development, coordination. They really seem awful. So these couple of pawns here, I mean, they must be very, very strong. So well, instead this didn't happen, so correctly Richard took on e4. Now queen e7, as I said previously, taking here, not a great idea. Knight f6 is checkmate, so queen e7 was played. And now queen f3. This seems to be a mistake, but of course this isn't. I mean, Richard still plays for lots of attack and try to win this at all cost, but he probably should have settled for a drawish line, more drawish line, which was to take on c2. There is a pin there, but I mean you've taken a piece for a couple of pawns, so you're going to give the piece back and just go ahead with simplifications. d5, and now bishop d3. D takes, bishop takes. There is an attack on the rook, so black must take. Queen takes. There is a pin. The queen cannot move, and the exchange seems forced. So queen takes, knight takes, and well, black is up a pawn. But white has compensation for his better developed pieces. Black has no developed piece at all. So well, this is probably more or less equal. Black is up a pawn, as I said, but well, white has compensation. He has a couple of developed pieces, and black's all pieces are on the back rank. Instead of this, Richard Rapport went for the what seems more sharper, but must be worse position after queen f3. He has a couple of discovered. This diagonal still keeps the pieces on the board. And really kudos to him for trying to go for victory, but unfortunately for him it didn't pay off today. Knight takes a1 was played here. Instead, d5 was once again strong. It seems to be once again a really interesting position. King takes c2, critical and almost a unique move. I mean, knight d2 not a great idea. This is a checkmate in one. Lots of possible checkmates in this non-played line. So king takes c2, and the point is now black is getting the pawn on the knight on d4. Now queen e3, just knight d6, rook d1, and well, sharp position. Black is up 2 pawns, and this seems to favor black because white king might be in danger. So this doesn't seem very great for black. I mean for white. Sorry. Either way, knight takes a1 seems to be good as well, kind of natural, although you can't see what is natural in this crazy game, but seems correct. Here bishop c4 was played. I don't know if white takes d5 once again, knight d2, queen d7, and black has simply too much material, and the white king is in the center. It's a target. White doesn't have that much development, etc. Not much counterplay, compensation. Bishop c4 instead, developing a piece. It's okay. Knight b6. Now knight f6 check, sacrificing, take. Now bishop takes, attacking both the rook on a8 and the queen. So queen c7 is played. Well, it's possible to take on h8 first, but there are lots of crazy lines here. Starting with d5. I mean, if white takes, this is a complete exchange, and after all, white just cannot take here. This is winning the queen. So after d5, rook e1 check, bishop e7, bishop f6. There are a couple of interesting moves here for black available. Bishop c2 check, king d2. Now bishop e4. If knight takes, first an intermediate knight takes c4 check. And after b takes c4, now you take on e4 with the pawn, attacking the queen. Of course, white can take with the rook, but now a very nice move. Long castle check. And after king c1, queen d7, threatening checkmate in one move. You can avoid it by taking the knight. Funny, material is back to equality, but black is absolutely winning here. Bishop g5 check, king b1, queen takes a4. There are lots of threats here. White king is very, very, very weak, so black is absolutely coordinated to win this game in not too many moves. This was a very interesting line, but was leading to a black victory. But once again, I like this line. I mean, you're threatening kind of funny checkmates. This castle check was also nice, and some intermediate nice moves. But anyway, this didn't happen as Richard played rook e1 check first instead of taking on h8 right away. Now king d7, he takes on a1, still keeping the threat of the rook on the rook on h8. He's also threatening the other rook on a8, but this is favoring black. I mean, black has too much material. He's up a rook and the pawn, and white is just not able to have enough counterplay or just even to get material back and hold the draw. Queen c6. Of course, all exchanges favor black. Queen takes, king takes. Now Richard takes on h8. He's only down a pawn, but his very poor coordination is going to give the victory to black. Now h4. It was also possible to play knight takes c4 the first spot. B takes, and now you're going to your biggest strength as black is this passed pawn. The bishop is going to help him. The rook on b8 would be a great piece to help this pawn go ahead and try to promote. But h4 is also looking great, uncoordinating even more white pieces, getting space there. Now he takes on c4, and after this bishop d3. All exchanges benefit black as he has a strong passer on b. This just reminds me of the game Dominguez Aronian, by the way, where there was almost material equality on the board, but the b pawn was absolutely a killer for black, for Aronian in that game. Now knight d2, d5 was played here. I mean, there are lots of ways of winning this already for black. Black's position is absolutely great. White has not coordination. d5, c takes, king takes. Rook e5 check was played here by Rapport. King c6. Now the rook goes to h5 to try to defend the bishop on h8, which is going to be under discard attack after this bishop moves to somewhere. But now a very strong move, bishop g6, killing, and the Rapport had enough. After 32 moves, he resigned this, basically because, of course, well, if he takes h4, which seems to be natural now, bishop e7, the double attack, discard attack on the bishop, and you just can't keep the rook on this h file defending the bishop, so the rook is under attack as well. So this is absolutely winning for black. Black is winning, getting material. Apart from that, even if he didn't, now I mean these couple of passed pawns on the queen side are very, very strong. So this is winning for black. So really interesting and an amazing game with lots of fireworks here between two very creative players. Hoping to see lots of more games like this. Hope you liked it.